welcome to the channel, guys. Let's look at what's going on in the world of AWOL lost women. This woman, and we do send our consolation to this lady. Very sad. She lost her husband in a scuba diving accident some years ago. She's going to share a story on how she waited 2 or 3 years and then met a man that she knew from school. She knew him from first class, way early part of her life. She did try the dating sites, that didn't work. Well, that's becoming obvious now and to everybody. They're just predators and dysfunctional people, unfortunately. And she's met this guy, and this is part of the story. Let's see what's going on here.
And I live 900 miles away from my family.
Now, she just said that when this all happened, she lived 900 miles away from her family, but I can tell you by doing a little bit of homework on this that the man that she meets from school lived near or around about the area of her mother. So this would have had an influence on some of this decision making that unfolded as this relationship began its journey.
I kept busy with my life, as busy as I could possibly be, but I was lonely. I was missing a companion. I did try some dating sites, and that'll be a different story at a different time.
I'm sure it will, but you won't get the full story. There's a lot of things that are better left unsaid with the dating sites, but let's carry on.
Not where I met this narcissist, because I wouldn't trust somebody like that.
Okay, so what she's saying is she wouldn't trust somebody off the dating site. So you got to understand what you're up against before you start, you people that are on those things. There's a lot of, and rightfully so, mistrust and lack of trust. And you start off on the wrong foot. This woman's been blindsided by a man that she knew from the past. But let's see.
How I met him was I knew him. I had already known him. He was somebody I had known since first grade. I'd known him pretty much all the way through high school.
So this is going to be a case of the better the devil you know, and he can come through the back door. She's blindsided herself.
12 years. So it made it a little bit easier for me to get close to him because I already felt like I trusted him.
So guys, not a little bit easier, a whole lot easier and very convenient. When a woman gets lonely, she's got to fill that space, and this was the perfect opportunity for her to go with the devil that she knew, let him in through the back door a little bit easier, and watch how this unfolds. She's she's played a big part in all this, don't you worry.
We reconnected through Facebook, and you think you know someone, but you don't.
And this is the message. And at her age and our age, you should know it takes time to get to know somebody. You got to work out their pros and cons and all the rest of it. But she's allowed herself, and I've seen them do this, they allowed themselves to be blindsided by familiarity.
I missed all the warning signs because I was vulnerable and I was lonely.
Yes, that's very, very true. And be careful, you ladies and men out there, because that's no excuse for missing the warning signs.
I was grieving. I was 39 when my husband died. Of course I wanted to have someone again, eventually, but that took every bit of 2 years to even get to that point.
And she doesn't have to justify that. She's got every right to move on with her life.
I found him on Facebook. And like I said, I knew him, and so I friend requested him, and he immediately answered me. And I was like, he aged really well. He was quite handsome and quite dashing. Matter of fact, he had beautiful, gorgeous brown eyes. He was very, very handsome. And
okay, so she was smitten by the opportunity, and this is the beginning of her part in the journey that she goes on. Okay, she's determined herself. She's absolutely determined herself through familiarity to make this work.
I remembered that I had a crush on him in school.
Okay, so she had a crush on him at school. So she's going to go down the rabbit hole on this one. She's going to throw all caution to the wind and throw herself to the wolves. So be very careful how this gets, how you navigate what she's saying, because the determination of a woman, once she sets her mind on something, they can blame everybody else for it, but at the end of the day, it's on them.
So we started chatting back and forth through Facebook. Then he gave me his phone number. I gave him my phone number, and we started talking. And
Okay, so she approached him. She's given out her phone number, and they started talking. That's the beginning. That's the beginning. That's it. It's on.
Secure. I felt safe because I already knew him.
But was that enough, guys? Just because she already knew him, is that enough to feel safe? I don't think so. It doesn't matter who it is. You've got to give it time, because you're crossing out of a friendship now into a space that's potentially intimate. So you got to look at things a whole lot different.
But I wasn't, because I didn't know him as an adult. I didn't know anything about him past high school. And
so it was her responsibility to find that out, wasn't it? Okay, it's her responsibility, as whatever age she was, 40-something by this time, to find that out. But because she knew him at school, because she was familiar with him to some degree, she's allowed herself to be blindsided. Is that his fault? No. Not at all. She's determined herself to make this work.
we talked for several months. We talked every day on the phone, every day.
That's the love bomb stage. Okay, that's the love bomb. That's the data gathering. That's the working out. He would have been working out her strengths and weaknesses, and his. So she had plenty of time to she said she didn't see the red flags. She didn't want to see the red flags, because she's purposed herself to make this work.
I shared with him all about what had happened, my life with my husband, our business, our home.
Why? None of his business. That's on her, isn't it?
Our resources, assets.
Sex life, all that would have come into it. Sex life, intimacy, how often, blah, 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 all that as well. She ain't going to say that, but
Shared all of that because we talked for so long, and I didn't have anybody else in my life to talk to. So he quickly became like a best friend to me.
And that's what she wanted. She got what she wanted, but that doesn't mean that you lose discernment and don't keep people in check.
Months, the attachment got very close, and he wanted to come to visit me, but I wasn't ready for that visit, so I didn't allow that visit.
Okay, so she's showing some resilience and restraint and caution. So she's not completely blinded, guys.
6 months, about 9 months later, we saw each other for the first time because I came home to visit my parents.
And there's the clincher. There it is. There's an element of convenience in this for this woman, because he lives near the parents.
He was there to greet me as soon as I got into town. And as soon as he hugged me, I hadn't been hugged by a man in 3 years. My husband had been gone. I immediately connected with him, but I fought that attachment. That was in September. By December, my dad had passed away. He was immediately there for me here in India.
Okay, so now we've probably got some spiritual things starting to take place here to bring this about. Very unfortunate that her father died. She's experiencing a lot of loss and death. The attachment that she mentioned before, no, that's not attachment. That's just intimacy. That's just the hairs on the back of your neck standing up through a little bit of a fairly touchy. But it does create a bond, which sounds contradictory to attachment. But to what level, I think it would have been like an injection.
Deanna, when my dad had passed away, and that's when we really got close. Still, I would not let him hold my hand. I would not let him kiss me. But my heart was becoming attached to him. We talked every day on the phone for hours.
Okay, so that's the typical scenario for a lot of these people. And I wouldn't have tolerated her, to be honest, if she, obviously she's taken her time and all the rest of it, but what difference did it make, viewers? What difference did it make for this person to do all that? In the end, none. Absolutely none. See, caution, restraint, this kind of thing means nothing if you're not discerning the person that you're with. And the thing that's fair game in the relationship world is it may not work.
He knew everything about my finances. He knew everything.
About a sex life, everything about, her and her husband. She would have, honestly, she's gone way too far, way too soon. Whose fault's that, viewers? Hers. Not his, hers.
Because he became my best friend. Because I had no one else to talk to.
That's a lie. She had her sisters, she had her parents, she had her children. She's just chosen to put all her eggs in one basket. That's what she's saying with this man. I had nobody else to talk to. No, what she's saying is I've put all my eggs in one basket with this man.
And then, after Christmas, he finally kissed me. And
that sounds strange, doesn't it? Then after Christmas, he finally kissed me. I know a lot of these women, they like you to get in and get going pretty quick. So while she's mentioning restraint, there's also an element of surprise as to how long this guy took to kiss her.
that took things to a different level.
Well, that's just common sense, isn't it?
I fell in love with him. I fell deeply in love with him. And I thought he was in love with me.
Okay, so
I didn't know.
what we've got to ask ourselves here, was it a kiss or are we talking more than that? I'd say we're talking a whole lot more than that if she fell in love with him. Obviously a devoted, committed, loyal, monogamous woman. But just because somebody kisses you and all that at the start doesn't mean that it's going to work out all right. And doesn't mean you just blindly fall in love, but that's what she's done. And that's what a lot of you listeners have done. And we've all done it at some stage and realised that, you know, it's not how it all works.
This man. I didn't know that he pretended to be something that he wasn't. He never seemed to work. And he shared with me that he had sold a trucking business and that he was living off of those proceeds. He shared with me that he had invested when he was young into oil and different stocks, and that he was partially retired and he was living off of his investments.
No, you'll find out later that he was living off his parents, his mother. And these are old stories. I mean, she was on the dating sites. Obviously, she didn't hang around those people long enough. But these are familiar stories that they'll tell you. These people that have failed in life, they'll tell you these stories just to get influence over you. And she's fallen for this. The trucking business one's an old one.
Because he wanted me to think that he had something of value. Because I wouldn't have been interested in him if he didn't. I found out later none of those things were true. None of those things.
Note the key word later. Okay, it took time for her to be able to unravel what was really going on. You've got to allow time. It could take a long time.
Things were true. And the investments, there were no investments. He was actually living off of unemployment, living with his mother because he couldn't hold a job.
Okay, so that's an immediate dismissal. At that point, she should have immediately left the relationship. Grown men that are living with their mothers, Tammy, can you shut that blind out of respect to the people? They've just opened their window across the thing there. Sorry. Yeah, these men that are living with their mothers that are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, that's a warning. That's Tammy, you don't need to shut that one. You just need to shut the Venetian. Yeah. Yeah, it's in there. There'd be an element of covert emotional incest, which is going to make this woman the third wheel. Now, she obviously doesn't know what covert emotional incest is, because if she did, she would have immediately left the relationship, because she would have just been an outside source of intimacy, whilst the man's primary source of security would have been with the mother. She was never going to be a source of security for this man. She was just going to be a convenience. And that was her number one. That was the big exit card for this woman, and she saw it was right in front of her, and she ignored it. Whose fault's that? Hers.
But he had weaved such a web of deception around me that within a year, he had flown to Florida with a ring, took me out to a beautiful restaurant, got up in front of the restaurant, got down on one knee, and professed his love and asked me to be his bride. My heart was pitter-pattering. I connected to this man in so many ways because we shared the same childhood. We shared the same friends. We both grew up rurally.
Is that enough? I've got people that I've grown up with and gone to school with and shared friends with, but I'd never be in a relationship with them just out of the convenience that I know them.
Farm someday?
And yes, they are attractive people as well, but you don't just do that. You don't do that.
He shared all of those things with me, so I connected I felt deeply in love with him.
But guys, what you've got to understand is she equally shared that. But look, these people were trying to build a relationship. That's the bottom line.
I didn't see the red flags. My eyes were blinded to the red flags.
Why? Because like most women at that point, she was determined to make the relationship work.
The first red flag was that you are 40 years old and you live with your mother.
Doing there, I said it before. That was the one. That was the one that was going to get her out, and she completely missed it. That was the one. That was the point. At that point, she should have had the courage to say to herself, this is it, I've got to get out. I'm dealing with a covert emotional incestual situation, and you cannot beat covert emotional incest, and you'll find covert emotional incest on my channels actually if you want to really work out how it works, because women do it too with their children. In this case it was the boyfriend, the older 50-year-old boyfriend with his old mother, and these mothers get involved with their children too deeply on the other age scales, and it's just, you'll never beat covert emotional incest. It is unbeatable. Would you agree with that, editor? She knows from family experience as well.
How could I not see that one?
Because she was blinded by her desire. Her desire was more important than her warning signs. Now, I'm not having a go at her, but this is what happens to men and women all the time.
But he was living with his mother, he told me, because he was helping take care of her.
He was taking care of her, all right. That's not a lie when you think about it, but I bet she was taking care of him as well.
Because he didn't have a job and no money besides unemployment.
So she, at this point, she knows this guy's a deadbeat. Okay, let's be honest. She knows this guy's a deadbeat. She's gotten in too deep. He's come in and he's blindsided her with the ring on the finger and everything.
I'll find that out until I actually marry him. But one of the flags I should have picked up on was when it was time to move 900 miles from my home in Florida with my daughter, who was in her last year of high school, and move all the way to Indiana. Did he come? Did he send me money? Did he help me? Not a bit.
And what that did, that enforced to this guy and proves to us that she was determined to throw it all away for this bloke. Now, she just said her daughter was in her last year of high school and she was still prepared to pack everything up and go to be. I've seen this with these women. They determine themselves, they abandon their children, they abandon their, things that are all in order. They turn everything upside down for their determination, and it comes back to bite them years down the track when the relationship fails. Because, the problem here is her. She just admitted it. She knew this guy was a deadbeat, and despite probably the counsel she was getting from her children and her sisters and everybody else, she's pushed on. She's packing up and going 900 miles away. Think, guys, she's going to be close to the parents. So there's a little bit of an agenda going on here with that as well, because she gets to be closer to her parents. And they would have played that her and the boyfriend or the new husband would have spoken about that. And surely she could have spoke to him about chipping in or whatever if she was worried about that. But no, this is where we can see her blind determination to throw everything away for this bloke.
Not one thing, but he was there to talk to me and to console me and all of those things. But not one dime did I get. Nothing. He never helped me. He never paid for a moving truck. Here I was going to bring everything I owned 900 miles away in a moving truck. Yeah,
but viewers, that's on her. If she, with all these warning signs and everything going on, the daughter's still not finished at school, last year at school and this sort of thing, at whatever level she was at, and to turn everything upside down at that point, that's pretty selfish on her part, don't you think? Absolutely, 100%. You can call it whatever you like, but it's and she'd probably admitted herself now in hindsight, she should have stopped. She should have stayed where she was and allowed time to work its course a little bit longer to see what was going on.
I brought my camper. I had an awesome camper. I have a motorcycle. I had jet skis. He knew all of those things. I sold the jet skis before I came to Florida, before I came to Indiana. But I brought my camper. I trailered my motorcycle. I brought the biggest truck that I could actually drive myself with all of my beautiful brand new furniture, and I brought it here. And he never helped me do any of those things. That was a flag.
That's not a flag. That's a big mistake on her part. That's not a flag. That's the determination that she had for this relationship, despite all other responsibilities and everything else. That's not a flag. If she knew that before she left, and part of her knew this is all wrong and ass up, and she ignored it. She ignored it by determination of wanting this thing to work, even though all the signs were there that it's not going to. The guy was living with his mum. Come on. You know what? In a way, she was possibly in some ways running to the rescue of this bloke, thinking that she's going to be the answer. I'll get him out from living with his mum. He can come live with me. We'll kill two birds with one stone. I'll be near my parents. The kid will just have to shut up and accept it. But it all goes so bad.
What kind of man would do that? Obviously, I wasn't listening because grief and loneliness had taken rule in my heart and my brain. I wasn't thinking correctly.
And that's a really fair confession. That's what she's trying to get across through this video to you people. You can't let your desires run away with you in a way in which you're completely blind. You've got to stay detached enough for yourself to make rational decisions.
I tell you this in hopes that you will not make the same mistakes. When you have been widowed, you will get lonely and you will want love again.
And you know what? That's an extreme case. And it's very sad because she's obviously a loyal, devoted woman. But all people experience this, widowed or not, right? Widow's an extreme case because it's a severe loss. But widowed or not, loneliness can blind you and cause you to make decisions that are going to be consequential, seriously consequential in the negative.
At some point in time, don't think just because you know them that they're not capable of this, because they are. I would have expected this off of a dating site, but not somebody I had known.
And that's where she blindsided herself. Because there's no difference. See, viewers, you've got to realise this. I can cold approach people on the street. How are you? Are you spoken for or whatever? But that's not going to determine the character of the person. I could meet someone off the dating site and they could be extremely excellent. It's up to you as an individual to be vigilant on the journey so that these things don't blindside you. My brother-in-law, he's passed away. I'll tell you a quick story. He went in for a gallstone operation. Just a run-of-the-mill gallstone operation. All went well, come out. The immediate post-operative attention that was supposed to be delivered to him on the other side of the operation was negligent, and he died. So my sister was a widow at a young age as well. And we loved that man, and he died. But he died because the vigilance of the nursing staff was negligent. Now, she's talking about personal negligence relative to her purpose to have company in her life. And this is where we need to be fair to see if things are going to work, but we don't need to be negligent. And what she's basically saying is, please, no matter how you feel, don't be negligent like I was. All the signs were blaring in front of her.
I just didn't know him in that way. You know, it didn't take long. Once I moved here, it didn't take long. I knew within a month that I was miserable, that I had left my home, that I had left my daughter who was in high school her last year. I left her.
So isn't that interesting? See, they'll leave their children and everything. Right? She left the lot for this bloke. The whole lot. And now she's miserable within a month. Who's making the rash decisions? Who's the one that's been hasty? Who's the one that's trying to show how faithful she is, but in an extreme, over-devoted, over-committed way? This lady, and what she's trying to say to you all is, please, don't rush in where angels fear to tread. It doesn't pay off.
In our home, she didn't want to come with us. I should have never have done that.
No, you should never have done that, but millions of women do for their determination to have a man.
When you are in grief, you just don't understand what is going on. Your head is in a fog.
No, I'm not going to agree with her on that. She wasn't in grief. She was in lust. She was determined to make this thing work. Her desires had taken over. She can't blame grief. That's not fair. That's a little bit of a cop-out. I'm sure it was in the back there somewhere, but no, she's making rational decisions based on her desires to make this relationship work. And what she's saying is, don't make these same mistakes, but she's got to take accountability.
I lost what money I had. He was out to keep me isolated from my daughters?
Well, she played into that. I don't even know why she left that daughter behind. It was the last year of school. What a selfish, irresponsible thing to do as a parent.
Did he love me? No. Did he want what I had? Yes. I'm going to share more with you on part 2.
So there's a part 2 to this. I'll get off here. We'll go and do part 2. We'll see what's going to happen, and I'll bring that in on the next one. But you can learn a lot from these people. I'll put the link to this video in the description. Be careful out there, guys and girls. This is the crazy world of lost AWOL women. I'll catch you on the next one, guys.